All right, guys, so we already talked a little bit about this when we talked about nutrition, but okay. So for those of you that weren't here, we're going to kind of go over some of this again. All right, we eat for two reasons. What are the two reasons why we consume food? Energy. What else? Nutrients. So we need both from our food. So we need energy to do all of the things that we do in our body, right? And we get that energy from our food. So there are multiple different types of energy, right? So one of the forms of energy is chemical energy. Okay. So there's chemical energy in food, right? And the bonds between like hydrocarbons and other kinds of things. So we eat food to get energy, and then we also eat food to get energy. If we just needed energy, what would we eat? What would be a perfect energy source if we just needed energy?
Carbs.
Sugar.
Cotton candy, right? We would just eat sponge, right? Literally, it's a perfect energy source. It takes almost no energy or work to break down, right? Our body can metabolize it almost instantaneously, right? We would just eat cotton candy to be perfect, right? But we also need nutrients from our food. Okay? And our creature or organisms on our planet can be broadly defined into two categories: heterotrophs and autotrophs. Okay, so autotrophs would be what?
Anything that uses photosynthesis
So
for
any
energy.
photosynthetic organism, so that would include plants, algae, things like that, right? So they are able to take sunlight and directly convert it into chemical energy, right? So they can take it and convert it into chemical energy. And then heterotrophs would include animals, right? Everything else, right? So including a lot of bacteria as well too, okay? And then heterotrophs can be broken down into three categories. Okay, so we have herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. Okay, herbivores would be what? What's some examples of herbivores?
Cow.
Cows, right? So any type of like raising animals, so sheep, deer, elk, goats, stuff like that. Carnivores, what would be carnivores?
Big cats.
So any type of predatory animal, most predatory animals, so like, lions, tigers, pumas, sharks, right? Orcas, stuff like that. And then omnivores, which would include what?
Most humans and primates.
Humans, right? So humans are, right, we've primarily evolved to be omnivores. Most of our primate cousins are also technically omnivores. Even though they eat a largely plant-based diet, they are omnivores, right? So, the digestive system refers to the mechanical and the chemical breakdown of foods so that nutrients can be absorbed by the cells. Right? Our individual cells can only take up individual monomers. Okay? Our body can take up monomers of amino acids, sugars, mostly glucose, right? And fatty acids. Okay? But we don't eat individual amino acids, sugars, and fatty acids unless, of course, you're in some type of comatose state. If you're in a comatose state, you're going to be given an IV, right? They're going to put a PICC line in you, and you're going to be given an IV solution that's going to have amino acid, sugars, and fatty acids in it to keep you alive. What do we eat?
Whole foods, like sandwiches and things.
We eat food, right? Like a Chick-fil-A chicken deluxe sandwich, right? So we eat what's called complex food stuff. So our digestive system and most animals' digestive systems are designed to do chemical and mechanical breakdown of food so that we can break it down into individual monomers, absorb those monomers through the gut wall and into our system, and then excrete waste products and anything that doesn't properly get digested. So that's what we're going to take a look at today. Your digestive system consists of the alimentary canal, which we talked about. From the mouth to the anus, right? It is about 21 feet or about 7 meters long, so it's pretty long. Anybody see the movie Machete? He cuts open the guy and he takes his intestines out. They don't come out like that, but that's about how long they are. They're pretty long. Okay? And then there's also several accessory organs like the liver, gallbladder, pancreas, that are also involved in aiding the process in various different ways. And there's also lots of hormones involved in it as well too. Okay? So some of the accessory organs would include, for example, the salivary glands. Salivary glands are involved in chemical digestion. We talked about that. So your saliva produces a chemical called amylase. Amylase breaks down amylose, which is the chemical term for starch. Right? Take a piece of bread, put it in your mouth, it will liquefy. Right? That, the raccoon we talked about. Gallbladder stores bile. Our liver is involved in literally tens of thousands of biochemical processes that are involved in metabolism, digestion. And then we got the pancreas, which secretes all sorts of enzymatic enzymes for digestion. And then the stomach, which primarily aids in chemical and mechanical digestion of the food. The food is then also, there is a small amount of chemical digestion happening in the small intestine, especially the duodenum and the ileum, the jejunum, and then absorption happens in the small intestines, and then, like we talked about, the main function of the large intestine is to prepare whatever's not digested to be eliminated as feces, along with some other things like red blood cells and other things like that. Okay. So again, the alimentary canal is about 9 meters long, which is almost 30 feet. It is probably, I would make the argument, one of the, if not the most complex organ system, right? And it's very much as an organ system. It's multiple organs working together. So complicated, in fact, that it gets its own subset of the nervous system, what we call the ENS, the enteric nervous system. And I talked a little bit about this on Tuesday, but there's a lot of data to show that there is a strong link between digestive health and gut health and mental health and mental well functioning, right? So, right, this is probably not news to anybody, but if you eat a bad diet, it's not going to be good for your mental well-being. Eating a good diet is good for your mental well-being. It's one of the hypotheses about why people who eat a traditional Western diet have greater incidences of all sorts of mental health issues, right, compared to other countries. So eating Taco Bell is probably not great for your health, for your mental health. Okay. For all of the most of the digestive tract, you're going to have multiple layers. So the first one is going to be called the mucosal layer. You're going to have lots and lots of columnar, ciliated columnar epithelial tissue. So that mucous membrane helps make absorption much easier, as well as secretion and things like that. So for example, your stomach has got a very thick mucous membrane to make sure that your stomach doesn't literally digest itself. So the powerful stomach acid and digestive enzymes that are secreted in your stomach. You then got the submucosa, which is going to have blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and then a little bit of connective tissue. You're also going to find white blood cells, so there's a specific type of cell called Kupffer cells. You don't need to know the name of Kupffer cells, but that's what they are. And then we've got the muscular layer, which helps propel the food through the system through a process called peristalsis. Anybody ever seen like a snake eat a rat? That's peristalsis, right? When you see the swallowing, that's peristalsis. And then you got a lot of connective tissue, which we call the visceral peritoneum. You occasionally will see like movies where it actually gets it right? So you'll see like somebody get eviscerated, like their gut gets cut open, right? And all of their intestines kind of come out in one big chunk. That's actually more accurate, right? Because it comes out in one big, they're all connected together, so it would come out in one big chunk, right? So it wouldn't be like sausage links coming out individually, like you see it in Machete. So here you can see the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and serosa. In certain parts of the digestive tract, especially like we talked about in the small intestine, you're going to find villi and microvilli. this is why we devote so much time to mechanical and chemical digestion, because we have to get it down to individual monomers in order for the individual cells of the gut wall to take it in, right? So we gotta break it all the way down to individual amino acids, sugars, and fatty acids so that it can be absorbed and then taken through the bloodstream and then absorbed by all the cells in your body, right? So right, every cell in your body needs these nutrients to do various different things in the body. Right? So it has to be broken down into its individual constituents to do so. Movements of the tube include mixing motions, right? So especially the stomach and the small intestine do that, right? So it'll actually shake it up, almost like a snow globe, okay? And then propelling it, actually moving like what we call a bolus of food, right? Moving that bolus through the same thing like the rat going through being swallowed by the snake. Okay. So you're going to shake it up, agitate it, right, and then you're going to move it. So propulsion is going to be, so you're going to pinch and move through the system. Okay. So the first, so digestion actually begins with what we call the cephalic phase, right? So chewing the food, right? So so in the mouth you have both chemical and mechanical digestion, especially if you've got starch, right? So you chew it up, right? You break it up into small pieces. Saliva will break it down, and then also, right? Smelling food, thinking about food, right? That also gets the process going, right? So you go to a restaurant, right? And you open concept restaurant, right? Where you can actually see the kitchen and see all the stuff going on in the kitchen. Right, you smell the food, right? Or who's gone to like a Krispy Kreme or a Dunkin' Donuts, right? You smell the wonderful donuts. That the act of smelling the donuts and anticipating eating a donut actually starts getting gastric juices flowing, gets your pancreas to start producing insulin, gets your pancreas to start producing pancreatic enzymes, right? So your brain, like you start salivating, right? Right. It's just ask Pavlov about that; he'll tell you.
What happens if you don't eat it and it's just created? For nothing?
It'll stop in a short period of time. So. Who remembers Pavlov? Does that ring a bell for anybody? Somebody does. Yeah, if you if you're driving, if you drive by a Krispy Kreme and like you get the juices flowing, it'll stop in a few minutes.
So the insulin and all that just gets reabsorbed, or is it just?
Yeah. Your body will just break all of it back down and recycle most of it. So, okay. We got the tongue. Tongue does a couple of different functions. Number one involved in taste, right, which is pretty important. Right. So flavor, right, is of course an important component, but also more importantly, right, your ability to taste food is a big factor in determining if the food is A, palatable, and B, safe to consume, right? So like we've all accidentally tasted like spoiled milk or something like that, right? So like it helps you determine like, is this something safe for me to eat, right? As long as palatability. People who lose taste of sense or smell, anybody know somebody that got long haul COVID? Yeah, right. So if your ability to taste and smell food is inhibited, your desire to eat food goes down quite a bit. So,
what's his name? He said he thinks that he, yeah.
what's his name?
Yeah.
Zach.
You don't know what his name is?
I'm not gonna name him.
Yeah. You know what anybody else's name is here?
Oh,
I know Lorraine because you talk about it all the time.
wow. He talks to me the most, doesn't know my name.
Malak. That's the other one. Huh?
That's all.
And that's the other one.
I have it in my phone.
You guys know what his name is?
Okay.
How about
Manda.
Amanda works.
Mandel.
Mandalay.
I'll give you a hint. Two of them have pretty similar names.
And Maria.
I like how he just taps out.
He's like,
Yeah. Two of them have very similar names.
it's Maria.
Maria.
Maria. Yeah.
Brian. Yeah. Took me a second to figure that out. The first couple of like
Yeah.
quizzes, I'm
Yeah.
like, what? Yeah. It took me a second to figure it out. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then your name is your legal name.
And then we have, what was it, Mariah over there?
Yeah.
We have a lot of M's in this.
Maria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was 3 of you. Yeah, it took me a second. Yeah. So
That's funny.
I had one semester. I had her name was Brenda Walsh. I was like, oh man, she was like my age. I'm like, oh god, your life had to have been hell.
Yeah,
for a
that
while.
sucks.
Yeah. So.
90210 for anyone that
It's a
doesn't.
TV show from the 90s. Okay. All right, so you've also got the tonsils. The tonsils are basically, we talked about these before, so these are lymph nodes, right? It would make sense, right? You'd have a lot of lymph nodes, right, in the mouth area because it's one of the most common vectors for pathogens to get into your body, right, through your mouth and your nose, right? That's why we always tell you, like, right, your mom always tells you, wash your hands before you eat, right?
Did you eat that Chick-fil-A on purpose?
No, I literally was hoping I'd get it before I got here. So it just happened to be fortuitous. So
Okay.
no, if I was doing it for
I was like, that's
for instructor
smart.
course, I would have eaten something better than that. Got some shawarma. We can talk about the palate, and tonsils. Okay. So we got our teeth. Okay. So you've got 20 primary teeth. What are primary teeth, guys? What are primary teeth?
Primary teeth are all your like baby teeth.
Your baby teeth, right? So you get 20 baby teeth, right?
Sorry, I was writing notes. I was
You're good, yeah. So you got 20 baby teeth, primary teeth, right? Those start to fall out, usually adolescence. And then you have 32 secondary or adult teeth, right? So how does the numbering of your teeth go? So,
You start on your
yeah. So upper right is number 1.
It goes
Yeah.
to 16.
1 through 16, and then 17 through 32. So, most adults don't have all 32 teeth. Most adults typically either have 30 or 28. We typically get a couple of removed, the wisdom teeth, right? Because usually there's not enough room in there for them, right? But you're supposed to have 32 adult teeth. So, you ever had anybody come in with hyperdontia?
Is that where it's double?
I think one time.
Yeah. It's great. Like you open up like teeth
Yeah.
all up in the roof of the mouth and
I
stuff.
think
Oh,
like
ew.
I saw like an intraoral picture of it.
Yeah.
So like they did come in the office, but I was like.
Yeah. You'll see a lot of that stuff when you
Yeah.
take like pathophysiology and
Yeah.
dental school.
Are they up in the palate? Like,
They'll have teeth in the roof of their mouth. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
I've seen
weird.
people with like double layers of teeth.
Yep.
Where,
Or
like,
like
I've never seen.
sometimes like your
Like multiple rows of teeth. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
like sometimes they'll have like their primary molars still, and they just won't get their adult molars, so they'll just have baby teeth in there.
Yeah.
That's weird.
And then you have to like take it out, and put an implant in.
Yeah.
Huh.
So hyperdontia would be excessive amount of teeth, and there's also the alternate condition, hypodontia, where you don't end up with enough teeth. Yeah. So yeah. There's some crazy stuff out there when it comes to teeth. All right. So function, right? So the teeth, our dentition is one of the best evidences that humans evolved to be omnivores, right? So we've got in the front of our teeth, front of our mouth, what kind of teeth do we have? So we got incisors and canines. What are incisors and canines for?
Breaking pieces of meat.
Right, tearing off meat, right? The teeth on the back are
Finding non-plant
for
material.
plant material, molars, right? So like you open up a horse's or a donkey's mouth, it's all molars, right? You open up a jaguar's mouth, it's all sharp teeth, right? So we're kind of in between the two. Okay, so we got incisors, canines, bicuspids or premolars, and then we got our molars. Have you seen a lot of tonsil stones?
Ew.
Yeah.
Those are crazy.
I actually got one removed at my office.
Yeah.
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 They're
What,
crazy.
what
It's
even
weird.
causes it?
What?
What causes that?
Just like bacteria.
bacteria.
Usually
like,
genetic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes genetics, or like if you get a really bad sore throat.
Oh, gotcha.
It's oftentimes bacteria like
I've
so-
heard they
If you're
smell
sick-
terrible,
If you're like really
but
sick and have a bad cold, you can get them.
yeah.
Yeah, saliva, bacteria feeding off the saliva and other kinds of things and calcifying it.
They're nasty. It's
They're
like
nasty,
it's
yeah.
like a weird like rubber
Yeah.
hard
Ooh.
like.
Yeah, and again, they make your breath pretty.
Yeah, I've
It's
heard that the
awful.
smell is really
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. You want to have good smelling breath, guys? Like scrape your tongue. That's
Yes.
scrape and floss.
Mhm.
Yes.
Floss and scrape your tongue. You'll get smelling breath. All right. So, right, different teeth do different things. Right, so we got the crown. The crown is the part that is above the gum line. Right, then you got the root, the enamel, pulp, all of that. Your teeth are replaced by a periodontal ligament. Right, so that's why it's, especially like if you're getting wisdom teeth removed, it's usually a little bit of work to get those bad boys out of there. Pretty hard sometimes.
You still have your wisdom teeth?
I have 2 of my wisdom teeth.
You said you got them out when you were awake, though, right? You like
I
get the
did,
crunching.
Yeah, they just numbed me up and took them out.
So why'd you take them out?
Huh?
Why'd you take them out?
I took them out because they were starting to cram. There wasn't enough room. So.
No, when?
Oh, I was about your guys' age. Yeah, I was in college when I did it. So.
I got mine removed without them coming out.
Yeah.
And I took 2 out.
Yeah, I was like 19 or 20 when I got it done. Yeah, so like in the
So painful.
like,
They
yeah.
had to put so much injections couldn't work.
It was like the early days of dentistry, like they just invented dentistry.
I hate it.
Were they all the way out by the time you took them out?
They were already out. Yeah.
Could it just take them out with pliers?
I didn't wait for mine to come out.
That
I
was
just
the old
got
age
like
where they
oral
had to like
surgery
the flip
and just
pedal
take
to
it out.
like run the drill.
I was gonna lose my insurance because I was changing jobs, so I was like, I'm just gonna do this and get ahead of it.
No, I went to Mexico and I got both of these
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Ooh.
They were ugly.
If
Yeah.
you go to AT still,
Is
you
your
can see
face
like the
swell
old school
really
like
bad?
dental
I've seen
chairs.
people's faces
I
like.
know.
I got sick. I got really sick.
That's not good.
Painkiller.
Yeah, maybe don't go to Mexico for surgery.
Yeah. Well, my insurance didn't cover it. Like,
Yeah.
I was not gonna pay a lot of money.
You can
No,
actually
I
get
don't
pretty
think-
good dental care done. I mean,
No,
you
Yeah,
get a
you
lot
have to
of,
find the right one, but
I really
you gotta shop around. but
Like,
you
do
find
your
all
research for
sorts of
sure.
Good quality care in Mexico, depending where you
My
go.
experience was great. Like,
Yeah.
it's just she only gave me 1 painkiller.
Sure.
But and I removed 2, and I kind of needed
It hurts.
And she only gave me antibiotic, which was so strong, and I couldn't take it because of the pain, and I couldn't eat anything.
man.
So it was a tough situation. I was just dead for like a week until I
Yes.
got back together.
Yeah, I got, I don't know, like 6 or 7, like,
I got 4 stitches on this
Percocets.
one.
you know.
Ugly.
Yeah, I got like 6 or 7 Percocets, but I only took them for like 2 days, and then I
Yeah.
took Tylenol for a day. So here's what your tooth looks like, right? So the crown is the part above the gum line. So you got the enamel, which is basically same thing as bone, and then you got the dentin and the pulp cavity. This is, and then you got the root, right? So this is why we call it a root canal, because you actually have to, if you have enough basically rotting from bacteria, you actually have to drill all the way down in there, and you got to clean it out. So that's why we call it a root canal. You're going down into the root end of an area there. So like when you're a little kid, brushing is more important, but as an adult, flossing is usually the more important thing to do, so you don't get. What color should your gums be, guys?
Pink.
Light pink. Yeah. So if they're red, that means you're not taking good gums. So, yeah. Cracks me up when people go to their dentist. Have you been flossing? Yeah. We know you haven't been flossing. We can look at your teeth.
You know you're lying.
We know you're lying about it.
Everybody lies about it.
Yeah. There was a
And their gums are bright red about bleeding everywhere.
gushing blood. Yeah. So, yeah, there was an episode of The Simpsons where the kids, Lisa needs to get braces, and one of the other kids like is getting lectured by the dentist, and the dentist brings out the big book of British smiles to like shame him into like taking care of his teeth. It's like British people with horrible looking teeth and stuff.
Dude, that's real.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah, I love my Nana to death, but her cooking and her teeth are
Yes,
the worst.
yeah.
Like, they're real
Yeah,
bad.
so like, they screwed around, like they changed the health insurance at the power plant, so Lisa had to get like the series headgear
Oh, gosh.
for like half the episode, and then she got braces at the end of it. It's funny. All right, so we got the salivary glands, we talked about, so parotid glands, submandibular, sublingual, right, so they produce saliva. Saliva, number 1, lubricates the food, make it easier to swallow. Number 2, helps with chemical digestion, especially if you're feeding starches. We got the pharynx and the esophagus, right? So this is the opposite. So we talked about, when we were talking about the respiratory system, the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx is a common pathway for food and air, right? Then you swallow, the glottis covers the glotted opening, so the food will then go down the esophagus, which does collapse, right? Because we don't need to worry about like creating an open airway. So food goes down usually as boluses. Foods, right? You don't just like take a whole rotisserie chicken, shove it down your throat, right? You take bites, right? So it goes in bites. Right? At the top of the stomach, you have what's called the pyloric I'm sorry, not the pyloric, at the top of the stomach, you have what's called the esophageal sphincter, and then at the bottom of the stomach, you have what's called the pyloric sphincter. As we get older, that esophageal sphincter doesn't always stay as quite tightly closed as it should, right? So as we get older, you're more likely to get what we call heartburn, right? So with stomach acid going up into it. If you have a real issue with that, they can prescribe medication for it, because if you have a constant, so we call it GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. Why is that a big issue other than the fact that it burns? Why are we really concerned about GERD?
It's like you could probably choke on, right?
We choke, but it also increases your risk of developing oral and esophageal cancer. Right?
It's
So
stomach acid.
that's part of why we recommend you go in and get like a dental exam, right? At least once a year, because one of the things your dentist is going to do and your dental hygienist is going to do is look for signs and symptoms of oral cancer. Right? Like most forms of cancer, the best way to treat oral cancer is early detection. Right? So you don't end up with like half your jaw missing.
Did you know that after you vomit, you're not supposed to brush your teeth for 30 minutes?
Yeah.
I found that out recently, which is
After you
disgusting.
eat anything.
Because the stomach acid on your teeth, as you're like grind, it'll mess with your enamel. Yeah. Which is you're supposed to just swish water. So that's gross, but everyone knows that now.
So like, well, for example, we talked about like, so for example, bulimics. What's the difference between anorexia and bulimia, guys?
Bulimics, purge.
Yeah, so anorectics don't eat, bulimics, you're gonna purge. Most people start off as an anorexic and then evolve into a bulimic because it's easier to hide bulimia, right? So like people notice you're not eating food, so you eat, and then when everybody's done, you vomit it back up. So they're like at increased risk, significantly increased risk of oral and esophageal cancer. A lot of them end up with like rotted out teeth, partially because of lack of nutrients. The same thing happens like meth addicts and crack addicts, right? So like the drugs like literally leach like minerals out of your body, so your teeth fall out. So same thing happens with like anorexics and bulimics with their teeth rot out, come from a combination of the acid plus lack of nutrients in the body.
Isn't there like, I want to say it's genetic, but one of my friend's kids, she's like, yeah, in our family, all their baby teeth rot out. Like, have you ever heard of that?
Yeah,
Just like a deficiency in something?
Well, yeah, so like, well, yeah, cavities in general, I mean,
Oh, it's not like cavities, it's like they just rot out. Almost
Sure.
like bottle rot would be.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a genetic component to that. Some of it is,
I've seen that before actually.
Yeah.
My classmate was a child and he was like that.
yeah.
A lot of the time it's if like the mom is pregnant and they like abuse a drug.
Oh,
So a lot of times it's drug abuse, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That is a
That's a
factor.
really
too.
big factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a genetic factor for almost everything.
Like it was just born like that. I feel like.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, some of it is also like, for example, much better fluoridation nowadays than we used to have, right? So, right, so we add fluorine to our water. So number one, mind control, and then number two, to help harden your teeth, so you're less likely to get like dental caries and stuff. Huh? Fluorine. How do you say it? Huh? Fluorine. Yeah, your water, you guys know that, right? Your tap water is fluoridated. We have fluorine to your water. So it helps harden the enamel, which like less likely to have dental caries and things like that. All right, so we talked about this. Okay, so the stomach, right? So the stomach's J-shaped. When it's empty, it's about the size of your fist, okay? But it can expand many, many, many times to accumulate. So humans have evolved to be able to consume very large quantities of food in one sitting. Why did we evolve the ability to do that? Thanks, good.
Because we're no longer hunting between meals and like we're getting large quantities.
Right. So for large parts of human history, right, especially like in the wintertime, you might not know when your next meal might come along. So when you came across food, like it was in your best interest to eat as much of it as possible because you never know when your next meal might come along. Okay? So the rugae in the stomach here, that allows the stomach to distend, kind of like we talked about, like so like a barrel cactus when it's dehydrated, looks like an accordion. When it's full of water, it's kind of round like a melon. Same kind of thing happens with your stomach, right? So like Joey Chestnut, right? You can eat like 50 hot dogs or something like that. Yeah, and then they vomit them back Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought he was just a monster.
No, yeah, they vomit them back. Yeah.
Hot dogs? Oh,
Yeah.
it's like the
It's
worst.
a hot dog eating contest.
Oh my gosh.
He
They
has
went-
like a,
They win like $500,000.
I
for
don't
that.
care. If you've ever thrown up a hot dog, you know it's not a good.
yeah, that's
It's not worth it.
disgusting.
I mean, I get thrown hot dogs once a year for $500,000. So.
That's gross.
Hot dogs are
That's
so
not
gross.
Huh?
Mhm.
Hot dogs are so gross.
He does other stuff too.
Huh?
He does other.
Oh yeah. Most of those guys do other competitive eating and stuff like that. So. Yeah. I had a student. She did competitive eating. So.
Probably tiny too. Huh?
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like a 4'9", like Japanese girl. Yeah. But yeah, she could just eat. She's like, I don't know why I can't gain weight. So we got gastric glands. Gastric glands secrete all sorts of stuff. So some of them secrete mucus. Again, the function of the mucus is to protect the lining of the stomach. If you have a lack of lining, you can end up with a sore, which we call an ulcer. What causes stomach ulcers, guys? It's not caused by stress. They're actually caused by an infection of a bacterium called Helicobacter pylori. You'll learn about that when you take microbiology. In the 1990s, a researcher definitively proved that it's caused by exposure, an infection of Helicobacter pylori. He won a Nobel Prize for proving that. Now, stress will definitely aggravate it and make it worse, right? But he proved that everybody who has an ulcer is also test positive for infection with Helicobacter pylori. Yeah, so we'll give you a round of antibiotics and then we'll go away. Of course, stress reduction helps.
How do you come? Is that something you would ingest, or like how does that?
Yeah,
Like food?
yeah.
Like in your food?
You have to ingest it somehow. Yeah, good. Yes, somehow. So chief cells secrete pepsin, which helps break down proteins. So pepsin here. You see a root word here? Pepsi, right? Why was Pepsi invented? What was Pepsi and Coca-Cola and Dr. Pepper originally invented for?
It's supposed to help with your stomach, like
With
nausea
stuff
and
with
things.
indigestion
too.
and stomach issues, right? So that's why you used to go to the drugstore to get it, right? So Pepsi was originally designed to prevent dyspepsia, an upset stomach.
Do you think the cocaine in the Coke probably helped too, or?
Well, it peps you up, yeah. So but it does help with altitude sickness, right? So, right. So if you're up in the Andes Mountains, or you're up in the high country of Colombia, and you're starting to get a little bit of altitude sickness, just bump a little bit of cocaine, and you'll be good to go.
I actually didn't know that about the carbonation thing, because
Yeah.
that's basically what it gets altitude sickness without being in altitude.
Yep. Yeah. So cocaine actually helps with altitude sickness.
Good to know.
So, we still, by the way, we still use cocaine for eye surgery and like you break your nose and they need to like fix your nose.
You said it's liquid though, right?
Yeah, liquid form. Yeah, so they'll take liquid cocaine and put it in a swab the inside of your nose. Give it about 10 minutes, you won't be able to feel it. Whole face will be numb.
Nice.
Still, it's both a really good anesthetic and a good vasorestrictor. Right? So you don't feel anything and you don't bleed either.
Is it just like straight liquid cocaine? Like
Straight liquid cocaine.
straight-
Yeah.
It's not like mixed.
Nope.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, it's from cocaine that we derive like lidocaine,
Like
novocaine.
Subocaine.
Yeah. Anything that's got cane in it is derived from cocaine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but cocaine is still like an extremely effective analgesic.
I just didn't know they could do it like straight liquid without it being mixed. That's cool.
Nope. Yeah. So again, it's a controlled substance and very limited things. But yeah, it's still probably the single best like topical analgesic we have out there, right? We've talked about it before, right? So like you see in like movies, like when they rub it on their gums, right? You're testing to make sure it's like not like been cut with something, right? So like rub it on your gums and your teeth go numb. That means you got good cocaine. Yeah. So it's very effective for them. But yeah, so Coca-Cola guys, Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. Yeah. So it would calm
Just
you, right?
like it like they
It was
used to.
yeah. So Coca-Cola was advertised to like pep you up, calm your nerves, right? Help you with focus, and it worked because it had a cola nut and coca leaf in it, right? So it had cocaine in it.
So, do you know where cocaine was derived
Well, so
No,
cocaine
it's not a
is
plant.
the active ingredient in the coca plant, which is indigenous to South America. Yeah, so Colombia, Venezuela, parts of that. Yeah, so it grows in the mountains there. Yeah, so when the Spanish came, right, and they moved into the area, they found that the locals would take the coca leaves and they would chew them in the afternoon. Right, they chew them throughout the day to get a pick me up. Right, so they were getting like you get a small distilled amount of it, right. So they would take like here in America, like you take tobacco, right. You put tobacco in your cheek. They would take coca leaves and they put it in their mouth, and they would kind of suck on it, and it would give them an afternoon pick me up.
So it's natural. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So well, it's derived from that. Yeah. So. In the Middle East, in Middle East and North Africa, there's a similar plant called khat. Works in there a similar kind of a mechanism as well too.
I think what he's saying is that cocaine is healthy and we should take it for energy and altitude sickness.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, but yeah, well, so like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, so like you go like where it grows in Colombia, right, and Venezuela, Nicaragua, all the it's up in the mountains, right. Some of these places we're talking, 10, 11,000 feet up in elevation. So yeah, like they figured out over the course of millennia that this will help with the altitude sickness, right? It'll help pep you up and give you some energy. Yeah. So yeah, but if you're getting it in like small diluted forms if you chew the tobacco leaf or the leaves, versus like so like cocaine, like you take the leaves, you mash. If you watch a couple of different like drug, or if you ever watch Narcos, they actually like do a pretty good job of like showing you how it works in Narcos. So you take the leaves and you gotta ferment them, right? And you you see the kids like mashing it up and I just see it now, like the video of me on YouTube. Here's how you make cocaine, kids.
Yeah.
Parietal cells produce hydrochloric acid, and then there's also intrinsic factor, which is necessary for vitamin B12 absorption. If you lack the ability to make intrinsic factor, you'll get a particular form of anemia called pernicious anemia. Telltale sign you have pernicious anemia is a smooth tongue. So if your tongue is smooth, that means you got pernicious anemia. So they have to give you a shot with intrinsic factor. So, how do you get B12 in your diet?
I supplement, but I don't know. I'm not usually low on it,
Yeah.
depending on what I eat. But
Yeah, so very few people are.
yeah.
And there's also gastrin. So gastrin tells the rest of the digestive system to kind of like get things moving because food's coming and you need to move other things down the line. So gastrin is released the second, like you smell food, think about food, taste food, all of that, right? So like you guys probably have gastrin flowing right now because we've been talking about food and like, thinking about Chick-fil-A and Dunkin' Donuts and all of that now. Okay. And if there's fat and protein, our small intestines will release a chemical called cholecystokinin, CCK, which slows down the process because fat and protein takes a longer time to digest than carbohydrates do. So this is part of why we find that diets that are very low in fat have the lowest adherence rate because you don't feel like a sense of fullness and satisfaction if you're eating a very, very low fat diet. So diet like under 50 grams of fat a day, they're very difficult diets to stay on for most people. You just don't get that feeling of fullness. Whereas anybody done like a ketogenic style diet, like where you eat a lot of like kind of meat sweats or anything like that, like you feel full after you eat like a big whole thing of like ribs and stuff.
I think that used to be called Atkins.
Huh?
I said I think that used to be called Atkins.
Atkins, yeah. So Atkins is the type of ketogenic. All right. Oh, so here, right? So parasympathetic system turns on your digestive system. Sympathetic nervous system turns off your digestive system. Right? That's why, like, you're in a fight or flight or a highly stressful event, like, you don't really feel like eating. Stomach doesn't really absorb stuff other than water, alcohol, and some drugs, which we specifically designed, like, so for example, aspirin and Tylenol and analgesics are designed to be absorbed through the stomach wall, so we decrease like absorption time, because when you're in a lot of pain from having your wisdom teeth taken out, like you want that Percocet to kick in, like now. What they give you? Was it?
It was the tiniest girl, it was just one, but she did it, like she gave it to me under my tongue right after like she took them out.
Probably Vicodin.
And that was it.
They gave me Vicodin for mine.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
It was either Vicodin or Oxy. Oxy was like the drug du jour there for a little while. Like, they told everybody, no,
She said it should last like 3 hours. So
That was probably Oxy then.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a while they were like, yeah, you can take as much as you want, you won't get addicted to it.
My mom loved going there because she could go to the pharmacy without any prescription.
Farmacia.
It's like a vaccine.
Yeah. All right, so the food gets turned into a liquidy paste, which is called chyme or chyle. Right, and then, right, so once it's become sufficiently liquidy, it gets released through the pyloric sphincter into the duodenum. Again, about a shot glass's worth at a time. The second it hits the small intestine, the duodenum, the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas will secrete their juices in as it's hitting the duodenum, right? So especially important is the pancreas releases a chemical called bicarbonate, right? So the bicarbonate ion neutralizes the acidity of the stomach. Otherwise, you would basically burn a hole in your small intestine very quickly, right? So stomach acid is about a pH of 2, and maybe sometimes a little more acidic. Like it's highly acidic stuff. It's nasty stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the pancreas. Pancreas does all sorts of amazing things. We're still learning a lot about what the pancreas does. So this right here is called the pancreatic duct, also known as the duct of Wirsung, W-I-R-S-U-N-G. It's a German word. A lot of what we understand about, especially digestive physiology, comes from the Germans. Pre-World War II, pretty much between about 1900 and 1945, the Germans were like doing a lot of like research on metabolism, the digestive system, all of that. And then World War II happened, and then we didn't really want to like listen to anything the Germans had to say, except for building rockets. So we kind of forgot about a lot of the stuff for like 40 years, and then like we rediscovered it all. Right, so the pancreas releases right here, so this thing is called the common pancreatic duct, right? And it combines with the hepatic bile duct together. So again, second stuff hits the duodenum, gallbladder releases its bile, and then the pancreas releases all of its enzymatic juices and bicarbonate and all of that, as well as the pancreas secreting insulin, which prepares your cells to be able to uptake glucose. Pancreas does all sorts of pretty cool stuff. Okay.
God bless you.
So among the juices, or the stuff that's in the pancreatic juice is pancreatic amylase, which breaks down starch, pancreatic lipase, which breaks down fat, trypsin, chymotrypsin, and carboxypeptidase, which break down proteins, and then nucleases, which will break down nucleic acids, because right, you're also eating the cells, and there's DNA in the cells and stuff like that as well too. And there's also secretin. Secretin tells your pancreas to release bicarbonate ion, which helps neutralize that stomach acid. Then we got the liver. Liver's got hepatic lobes. It's got Kupffer cells, hepatic sinusoids for all sorts of stuff. Your liver does all sorts of amazing metabolic activities. Literally, you could spend multiple semesters taking biochemistry classes where you're doing nothing but studying enzymatic pathways and biochemical pathways in the liver. Like that's how much stuff the liver does. You literally, like multiple. I took 2 semesters of biochemistry, and both semesters of biochemistry was just the liver. All stuff that's in the liver, right? It's amazing stuff. This is one of the 2 main places you store glycogen, which is basically the mammalian form of starch. So we store glycogen in our liver, and then we also store it in our muscles. Vitamins A, D, and B12 are in the blood are stored there. Filters out things, which creates bile, and it also does metabolic activities involving. So here's the cool thing about the liver, right? So your liver can convert carbohydrate into lipid or protein. It can convert lipids into carbohydrates or proteins. Metabolic needs, right? So it can transform back and forth. There's all sorts of really amazing stuff, guys. It's really cool. Okay. Bile's function is to emulsify fat. So you take a big fat globule, right, and you secrete bile, and it breaks it up into tiny little globules, which again makes it easier for your digestive system to absorb it. Which is why, like, if you don't have your gallbladder anymore, if you eat a really fatty meal, it can cause gastrointestinal distress, right? You kind of sits there like you eat a cheeseburger, it sits there like a rock in your gut. So there's things called bile salts. Anybody here like change the diaper on a baby, right? So like, you know, sometimes that poop will come out all sorts of weird colors like orange and green and yellow. You're like, what the hell's wrong with this baby, right? So like when the baby poops orange or green or yellow, that's bile salts that are being excreted through their fecal matter. Right? So that's like a good indication that you or a loved one is having some type of like digestive health issues or stuff like that. You might want to go see like an endocrinologist or like a gastroenterologist if like your poop's coming out orange or green on a regular basis. That could indicate you got something wrong with your liver. Those are bile salts.
Can it also affect the baby's like color?
Oh yeah, well yeah. So like you know, babies, if you're starting to get jaundice, you're starting to turn yellow. Yeah, that means there's something wrong with your liver. Yeah. So like people with hepatitis, like Hep C, or like people in like liver failure because they've been drinking too much, they'll end up like bright yellow. Yeah. So the lead singer from a band called The Doors, he basically drank himself to death. His last like couple of months he was alive, he looked really jaundiced. He drank so much. All right, let's talk about the small intestines. Okay. So up until this point, we've been doing a lot of chemical and mechanical digestion, especially a lot of chemical digestion. All right, now we're getting into the small intestine. So inside the small intestine, again, you got the duodenum, where you're doing chemical digestion, the jejunum and ileum. Okay. They have a lot of so there's this thing called a fatty apron. It's called the greater and lesser omentum. This is why, like we talked about, for example, like, you know, you see those dudes with like, right, they look like they're 9 months pregnant, right? So what's going on there is they're starting to accumulate a lot of fat around the organs, especially the greater and lesser omentum, right? That puts a lot of pressure on the organs, and that can cause a lot of issues with the organs. So that's called the mesentery. Okay. So you can see here, so this is that fatty apron. So when you see like the big old bellies, right? Unless it's like really jiggly, then that's fat on the outside, but like if it's like hard as a rock, so that's what we call visceral fat. So that's fat kind of around the intestines. Yeah. Very bad for you. You got intestinal villi, or those little finger-like projections. They have lacteals, which absorb the fat, and then the capillaries absorb the carbohydrates and proteins. You got intestinal glands. On your microvilli, you've got what are called brush border enzymes. So you got peptidases, which break down amino acids, sucrase, maltase, and lactase, and then an intestinal lipase. So what's sucrose, maltose, and lactose, guys?
Sugar. Breaks down sugar.
So these are what we would call dimers, right? So dimer would be 2. Okay, so sucrose is table sugar. So sucrose is glucose plus fructose. Okay, maltose, which is bread sugar, is a glucose molecule plus a glucose molecule. And then lactose, which is glucose plus galactose. Okay? So at this point, we're finally doing the last bit of chemical digestion. Okay? So we're taking dimers of carbohydrates, right? We're taking like dimers and trimers of amino acids, and fatty acids, and we're finally doing that last little bit of chemical digestion. So now we're finally down to individual monomers of amino acids, simple sugars, and fatty acids. So now finally, they can be absorbed through the gut wall of the jejunum and ileum especially. Okay. So fats will go through the lymphatic lacteal. Proteins and amino acids and sugars will go through the capillaries. Mucous membranes and all of that. So monosaccharides, so these would be disaccharides, so sucrose, maltose, and lactose would be a disaccharide. Starches like bread would be a polysaccharide. What's poly mean, guys?
Many.
Many, right? And so monosaccharides and amino acids are absorbed through the capillaries. And then fatty acids are absorbed through the lacteals, and then water just simply through osmosis along with electrolytes. Right, so the duodenum up to a small extent, but primarily the jejunum and ileum is where we're going to be absorbing all of these monomers. Okay? And then you're going to get the ileocecal sphincter or ileocecal valve. Right? And this will cause what's called the gastroileal reflex. So if you already have fecal matter in the large intestine, food passing through the ileosphincter will cause that to move further down the into the colon so that you can eliminate it out through defecation. You don't want to get stomped up. All right, so large intestine, we call it large because of its diameter versus the small intestine, whose diameter is smaller. You got these like little pouches called haustra, and then you've got this connective tissue here called the tinea coli. Function again of the large intestine is, number one, it stores a lot of bacteria, right? So we got a lot of bacteria in there to make like vitamin K and a few other things. You have to have good gut health. But its primary job is to regulate, get the fluid and electrolyte balance of your waste products right. So again, what happens if you take too much water out of the fecal matter?
Constipation.
Constipation. If you don't take enough out, you end up with
Diarrhea.
Both of which, if they're bad enough, can be fatal. They're both serious conditions. So you got the ascending, descending, ascending, transverse descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and then the anal canal. We talked about this. The anus has got two sphincters. The internal one is involuntary, and then the external sphincter is voluntary, but there's only so much you can do. Right? If the urge to defecate is strong enough, right, defecation is going to happen whether you were ready for it to happen or not. So we got this pouch, it's called the haustra. Alright, so we talked about this. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about feces, then we'll wrap up. So feces is undigested material, right? So some of us have very inefficient digestive systems. We might only absorb about half of the nutrients. Some of us have more efficient. Water, electrolytes, mucus, and bacteria. And then old red blood cells. So the color of feces is usually due to red blood cells, or of course, you like to eat beets or green dye or whatever. And then the smell is largely due to the bacteria that's in there. Okay. All right, let's talk about this real quick. So we're running out of time. I know we're going a little late here. Okay. All right. So nutrition, right? So first off, what is the allied health profession that involves a dietary manipulation and recommendations to treat and prevent diseases? Dietetics, right? So a registered dietitian is the only person that is licensed by state governing boards to provide what's called a therapeutic diet, right? So there's no such thing as a registered nutritionist, right? So literally anybody could be a nutritionist, right? But only registered dietitians can provide what we call therapeutic diet. So what would be a therapeutic diet? Something to treat your diabetes, treat your heart disease, treat your kidney disease, right? So only somebody that's a registered dietitian can provide diets for that. You want dietary advice to get in shape for going to the beach? Anybody can be a nutritionist, right? So yeah, so it's one of those meaningless terms. Okay. So nutrition is the field of science where we look at how the body takes in, uses nutrients, and then what are optimal nutrient intakes to improve health and also to treat and prevent illness. And we're primarily focused on what we call essential nutrients, which are things that we can't get synthesized from our diet. Let's talk about carbohydrates. So carbohydrates come in so we got simple carbohydrates that would include sugars. Then we have complex carbohydrates, which include starches, fruits, vegetables, things like that. What is the main function of carbohydrate in the body? We talked about this way back in the beginning of the semester.
Fuel.
Energy, right? Do we have an essential carbohydrate requirement? We do not. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take in carbohydrates, but nothing specifically medically will happen to you if you don't get carbohydrates in your diet. Okay? And then we do have cellulose, which technically is not a nutrient, right? But you need it for good, clean colon health, Okay. If you don't take in any glucose, your liver can make it through a process called gluconeogenesis. Your liver can make up to 150 grams of carbohydrate a day under ideal circumstances. So many people can and do go large periods of time without consuming any meaningful sources of carbohydrates. So for example, like we call them Masawi, they're a tribe in Africa. Right? They're the ones that jump up and down and they paint their hair red and all of that. They pretty much almost eat nothing but like stuff that comes from cows, right? So they eat cow's milk, cow's meat, cow's blood, stuff like that. They get no carbohydrate in their diet. There's also some other like hunter-gatherer groups that don't get hardly like the traditional like diet of like the Inuit and the Eskimos and then the people that live up in like northern Finland, like they don't really eat any carbohydrate. Like they're pretty much eating like moose meat and reindeer. That's right, they're taking Rudolph.
Why do you look at me and say that?
So how much carbohydrate should you take in? That's going to depend on a lot of different factors, right? So generally speaking, the more active you are, the more carbohydrates you probably want in your diet. The less active you are, the less carbohydrates you want in your diet. Lipids. Do we have a lipid requirement?
Yes.
Yes. When bad things happen to us, we got zero lipid in our diet. Yes, right? So we need lipids for all sorts of things, hormones, cholesterol, lipids, phospholipids, linings, all sorts of stuff like that, right? So bad things would start to happen to you very quickly if you didn't get any or an inadequate amount of lipids in your diet. So we got triglycerides, which are found in plant and animal foods, mostly animal foods. Saturated fats, what's a good rule of thumb, saturated versus unsaturated? Saturated is going to be solid at room temperature. Unsaturated fatty acids are going to be liquid at room temperature, right? We used to think saturated fat bad, unsaturated fat good. We found that it's a little more complicated than that, right? So like some forms of unsaturated fat are good for us, some sorts of unsaturated fat are not so good for us. Some sorts of saturated fat are good for us, some sorts of saturated fat are not good for us, right? So it's much more complicated. Probably the messiest form of field of science is probably nutrition, right? There's almost nothing that anybody agrees on other than you shouldn't eat an American diet. That's pretty much the only thing a nutritionist can agree on, is that. Okay? So we need lipids for all sorts of things. What happens if you eat more lipids than, first off, what happens if you eat more carbohydrate than you need? What's your liver gonna do? Convert the excess to fatty acids and put it into your adipose tissue. What's gonna happen if you eat more fat than you need? The excess lipids are gonna be stored in your adipose tissue. Okay. Proteins, do we have an essential protein intake? Yes, pretty high protein intake. Would bad things happen to us if we didn't get any protein in our diet? Yes, and it would happen very, very quickly, right? So we need proteins, right? Our body's essentially just made up of protein, right? Almost everything in our body is made out of proteins, okay? There are two types of protein sources, complete and incomplete. What's the difference between a complete and incomplete protein source, Emily?
It has all the essential amino acids.
Amino acids, right? So give me an example of a complete protein source.
Beef.
Pretty much any type of animal protein is going to be a complete protein source. So meat, dairy, eggs, anything like that is going to be a complete protein source. Incomplete protein sources would be
Lots of stuff.
plant materials, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a vegetarian or especially a vegan, right, you have to mix and match protein sources in order to make sure
You're a vegan?
that you're getting a sufficient amino acid supply, right? So for example, most indigenous diets are relatively low in meat. So for example, Native Americans of the southwestern United States figured out that if they combine maize with beans, they would get a complete protein. So maize, what's maize, guys? Corn, yellow corn, right? So corn is missing lysine, and beans are missing glycine. So if you combine the two together, you get a complete protein source, right? So almost every like culture around the world has figured out like there's a staple peasant dish, right, which is a couple of like different things mixed together, and they figured out real quickly if I combine these two things together, my kids stay healthy. Right? So if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you need to combine, mix and match protein sources
I've heard
to get-
seitan's actually incomplete.
Huh?
I've heard seitan's incomplete. I don't know too much about that, but
Which one?
seitan, it's like, I think it's done from like gluten. I don't know.
I mean, there's probably something they bioengineered at this point that's complete plant protein.
Somebody told me that I should add like amino acid, like
Yeah.
what is it, like the Bragg's liquid aminos or something to
Yeah.
it.
Somebody probably in the lab at this point has probably like created like a plant-based source that's a complete protein source, but that's kind of antithetical to the whole concept of like vegetarian and veganism, which
Yeah.
is to eat although like I have met a few vegans who eat horrible diets, like
Right now, yes.
yeah, so like you could eat Skittles, like nothing but Skittles, and that would technically be a vegan diet.
Okay, I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, Oreos are vegan, which is
Yeah,
unfortunate.
Oreos are vegan. Yeah. So, 'cause, Oreos are made from partially hydrogenated oils as opposed to that's right. So protein requirements are going to vary by size and weight, metabolic activity, all sorts of other things. The WHO, the World Health Organization, recommends that you get in at least 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. That's the bare minimum to prevent disease. A lot of people would make the argument that that's probably an insufficient amount of protein for optimal protein intake, but you need at least that to ensure that you're not getting in disease requirements. A lot of the recommendations that governments will make is the bare minimum we need to ensure that disease processes don't get in. So for example, what was the first deficiency disease identified?
The vitamins.
So the first deficiency disease identified was scurvy, right? So for a long time, right, the bane of the existence of anybody that went to sea for long periods of time was a condition called scurvy. What happens when you have scurvy? You get open sores, or like sores in your mouth and sores everywhere else. Scurvy is caused by a lack of what, guys?
Wasn't it salt? Iodine?
Vitamin C, right?
Oh, that's right.
So vitamin C is essential for making collagen, which is one of the like essential proteins, structural proteins in your body, right? Where do we get vitamin C in our diet?
Fruit.
So citrus fruits especially, and then also like brightly colored like plants, right? There was a British naval medical doctor who started putting the two, figured it out, and that's when when the British Navy went to sea, they would take limes with them, and you would squirt lime juice on the food, and that prevented people from getting scurvy, right? So, like you hear, like if you go to like Pirates of the Caribbean and Disney, or you see old pirate movies, right? You might hear somebody call somebody a scurvy dog, right? So scurvy was like a real condition, right? So like there's different B vitamin deficiencies, like pellagra and beriberi, which are caused by a lack of vitamin B in your diet. A lot of these diseases started to show up during World War II due to starvation and famine, and then also, like for example, people in concentration camps or POW camps would start to get some of this stuff as well too.
What's the deficiency of iodine that I'm thinking of? What causes, or what happens with that?
That would be goiter.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah,
okay.
we talked about that. We talked about goiter. Right? So vitamins can be broken down into two categories: fat soluble and water soluble. Fat soluble are A, D, E, and K. You can quite easily take too much vitamin A, D, E, and K. Water soluble B and C. It's technically possible to overdose on vitamin B and vitamin C, but it's extremely difficult to do so. Right? Anybody take a multivitamin with B vitamins in it, right? That would just turn your urine like a bright yellow sort of a thing. Contrary to popular belief, there is no evidence that taking large amounts of vitamin C will prevent you from getting the cold or speed up the recovery period from colds, flus, and other kinds of things. If you don't get enough vitamin C in your diet, that will help you get more sick, but a deficiency of any of these are going to make your immune system work more efficiently. So minerals, right? So we need minerals for all sorts of things. Some of them we need in fairly large quantities, like calcium. Others we need in very small amounts, like for example, cobalt and copper, and other things. Some of them we get way too much in our diet. So for example, we get way too much sodium in our diet. We typically don't get enough potassium in our diet unless you're vegan. So, and then an adequate diet is a very controversial thing. So an adequate diet is a diet that's going to supply all of the micro and macronutrients that you need. Malnutrition is caused by lack of one or more nutrients in your diet. Here in America, we've managed to accomplish the double feat of being simultaneously overfed and undernourished at the same time. Right? So we eat a diet that provides too much, but also not enough at the same time. Yeah. So you want to eat a healthy diet, just pretty much don't eat what Americans eat.
Good idea.
Okay. Do you guys want to take a quick break and then we'll do the urinalysis, or do you just want to power through and do the urinalysis and get out of here?
I'm good with powering through.
You want to just do it and get out of here? Okay, all right.